Hey, I was thinking about going back to school to get my master's.
I just saw something that said you could do it in a year for like 11K.
Order 11?
Yes, see you at 11.
1111 Masters Boulevard, please.
It's gonna be 11 even, buddy.
Really?
The crews are all around us.
Some things are too obvious to be a coincidence.
God vibes only. 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 God vibes only.
only. God vibes only.
You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace, you are now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Root, and I got my good brother here, Brother Ra. How you doing? Unmute yourself real quick, my brother.
Just taking it a day at a time, King. What about yourself?
Same thing here, man. Same thing here, man. Just climbing, man. Just climbing, man. Trying to get like you, my brother.
Hey, brother. One hand washes the other.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. But before we get too far, I want to make sure to remind you all, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you can see when we're going live and when we drop new videos and different things like that. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Cryptica Astrology, and our good people over there on Patreon. Big up to y'all. Big up to y'all. We got some interesting things coming up on the Patreon, so definitely pay attention to your messages and everything like that so you can, be locked in or whatnot. But if you want to follow us on Instagram or find us on any other place other than YouTube and everything else, follow us at Cosmic Convo. That's CosmicConvo on Instagram. From there, you can get to everywhere we're at on the web at pushitforward.com. Push It Forward Instagram account, and my personal Instagram account, Root Life. You can find all of that there from following us on Instagram. Brother Ra, how can the people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me via Shechem Ra on IG or Facebook. You can also get at me at colorproofsastrology@gmail.com. And if you all want to start taking a look, you can start to peruse colorproofsastrology.com. It is available. It's not completely where you can make appointments, but you can see some of the materials, some of the services that I offer. So it is available. So definitely take a look.
Indeed, man. Big up to that or whatnot. Got the website popping, man. I checked it out, man. It looks amazing or whatnot, man. So congratulations, my brother.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Indeed. So, just a couple quick announcements real quick. If you're tuning in live today, we actually have a solar eclipse coming up in a few hours or whatnot. So, definitely, adhere to your eclipse protocols or whatnot. Me personally, I'm not doing too much today. You know what I'm saying? Just got some couple things planned up, but I'm not, going out and, painting the town red or nothing like that. Just taking it easy or whatnot. What's your thoughts on this eclipse coming up?
Yeah, just laying low, hanging back, not really absorbing any of those inimical forces. You know, allow them to play them out, allow themselves to play themselves out, and hit the ground running tomorrow. So just following my protocols and making sure that I stay out of the way.
Indeed. And you want to know where these, when we're doing these shows, when we're talking about, predictions for this year and that year and all that stuff like that, and eclipses and major transits, you need to know your chart. So make sure you understand your chart, know what's happening, where it's happening, what it means to you or whatnot. That's important, especially if you listen to this podcast. So at the very least, you should definitely be doing that. So definitely make sure you have your chart, good, accurate time and everything like that to know where these things are occurring in your particular chart or whatnot. So, definitely, take heed to that or whatnot. But, outside of those announcements, I did want to make a couple announcements. As some of you know, we also are on all of the audio podcasting platforms. We always have been. In fact, that's how we started or whatnot. So YouTube is a relatively newer aspect of the, what we're doing and stuff like that. But, we've gotten access to be able to post these videos as well on Spotify. I don't know if YouTube is going to try to suppress what I said because of that. But, for those of you who are listening to us on Spotify, you can also catch the video there as well. And the older episodes will be, uploaded, from time to time and stuff like that. But definitely moving forward, you'll be able to catch everything that we do from last episode moving on a video format or whatnot through Spotify or whatnot. So definitely big ups to that. And whatnot. We do pretty good on the audio platforms. A lot of our international listeners, that's where they catch us and stuff like that. So if you are a solely, audio listener, please take the time and, go check us out on YouTube. Give us a good subscribe, a like. Subscribe to all the channels on the content family, including Calipurusha Astrology. Do all that good stuff like there so we can keep on pumping this good knowledge to you all and everything like that and whatnot. All right. Rob, before we get into today's subject, you want to say anything to the people, anything like that?
I just really over the next few months, especially as summer begins to come upon us, just really be aware of your surroundings. It's very interesting that when these nodes change signs, especially into fire signs, you just really want to be careful. Pay attention to your surroundings. Look at people that are making erratic, kind of behavior patterns, or doing things that are seemingly odd or different. Because right now, those forces at play, martial forces, that is, are extremely erratic, extremely unpredictable, extremely just bottom line can be violent, So just really be aware, these forces are real. They're not something that we just concoct or contrive out of, placements and charts. They affect us real time. So just when you're in public, if you're in major areas that people transact or there's a movement, when you're driving, let the person have let the person over.
Right.
If you're parking somewhere, let them have the parking space. It's just not worth it, for your life or your family's life to be endangered by something that just is trivial. I've been noticing in my own personal life, things have been intensified. Aries in the Greek and Roman nomenclature is the god of war, right? So, you know, there's just things that pop out. And if you're not aware or at least kind of feeling the vibe around you, you can, be an innocent bystander that gets caught up in the whirlwind. So just really pay attention to, especially, when you're in close quarters, you know what I mean? Um, just really be aware that these things can trigger, right? Erratic behavior and violent tendencies. So, but that's pretty my only kind of public service announcement.
Indeed, definitely. Take heed to that for sure, because Rahu and Aries is, wherever Rahu goes, Rahu starts a little bit of trouble at some point. A lot of trouble or a little bit of trouble. It's always it's always going to do a little something there. So definitely, be cognizant of that, of whatnot. But to that point, today we're kind of doing somewhat of a continuation of our last show. Last show, we kind of mainly focused on, masculine expression in regards to this particular topic, but I think today we're going to take a deeper dive in regards to just the fire signs. You understand what I'm saying, of the zodiac, and take a closer look at how they manifest themselves in the things that they have in common, in particular the rulerships in the nakshatras and different things like that. And just kind of see how they manifest and have a deeper understanding of those from a more global perspective. Last time we talked about it from a masculine perspective, more from a male centered type of perspective, but on today's show we're going to kind of look at it from a more global perspective and give us some insights into that. So this definitely be a good little conversation to tune in on or whatnot. So big up to that.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of, like you said, just piggyback off of what we did last week.
Right.
In that we discussed, the fire signs in regards to masculinity, right? And fire signs in regards to Jyotish, right? Not Western astrology, but Jyotish. They harbor certain variable energies or variances of energies because we utilize what's called the nakshatras. And it's nice because we can take and really fine tune each one of these particular energies that we're looking at. We don't have to just say Aries is Aries, right? Or Taurus is Taurus, or any other sign for that matter. We can really focus in on the differences between these kind of overarching archetypes and make them more subtle kind of um, players as far as the scene is concerned or how they really manifest. And the nakshatras are beautiful. It's a beautiful system. They're called the lunar mansions, right? They're also called the wives of the moon, right? And you know the nakshatras are based on number one, stars, right? That make up the constellation that Aries or Taurus or Gemini would be um, constituent of. There's smaller portions of each particular sign. So each area has a specific star or stars that align with them. They're also called asterisms in another terminology. So if you're looking
Right.
at asterisms, asterisms literally kind of boils down to star stars. So each one of these kind of smaller divisions of the zodiac amounts to 13 degrees 20 minutes. It's about the amount of time that the moon takes to travel in the sky from one day. So it moves about 13 degrees 20 minutes every day, right? Every 2.25 days, it moves through one particular zodiac sign.
Right.
And we take these and we kind of even further truncate or measure them in smaller areas called padas, which add up to 3 degrees 20 minutes. So we really get fine tuned when we talk about the different attributes of a sign. The nakshatras are, interestingly enough, codified, and when I say codified, they're given a specific kind of way they play out, right? And we're going to cover a few of those. They're pretty vast. I mean, we've got all kind of different things as far as the Gana, right? Gana means the type of energy that it produces, whether it's demonic or so forth. We have the way it looks, right? The way it glances or glares. We have sub rulers. We have all kind of different things that really fine tune the measurements of a particular sign. But we'll cover a few today. They're just too many to really go into depth. We may even have an episode where we touch on a few of those, just in general, that we can kind of say, hey, this is what this means and what that means. But if you're also interested, I do teach this in my level, my initiate level course. So if you're interested, definitely let me know. We've already started, so we've kind of getting to midway. But at some point in the future, if you want to ride that ride, definitely let me know. We can get you involved. But talking about the fire signs, the fire signs harbor, and let me also say this before we go any further. This is a repetitious process as far as looking at the signs. Patterns in nature is what our ancestors were reviewing. That's what they were looking at, is patterns that repeated themselves, right?
Right.
Right. And these patterns, they're not hard to really understand once you get to understanding the consistency of them. And the fire signs have a very specific pattern in regards to the nakshatras or the asterisms. There are differences, of course, right? And we'll talk about some of those differences, but there are still some very key similarities between all three fire signs in regards to the nakshatras. But the first thing we want to keep in mind is that every particular fire sign, right, has what's called a Gundanta Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Gundanta Zone is right around between 0 to, I'm going to say, maybe 2 to 3 degrees. It depends on the planet that's placed there. But generally speaking, it's between 0 to 3 degrees. Right? That's what's considered a Gundanta Zone. The closer you are to what we consider 0 degrees Aries, 0 degrees Leo, 0 degrees Sagittarius, that is when you really are caught up in that particular kind of area where things can become overwhelming, uncontrollable, where you feel like you're consumed as far as these energies are concerned, right? Water signs also have Gundanta zones, but interestingly enough, the fire signs, right, have a way of expression in that they take and kind of almost catapult you or push you into a action or a way of being. And that's what fire does. It's all about action, right? Any fire sign is denoted by taking action of some sort.
Right.
Gandanta literally means, right? Well, the translation of it means to be drowned or consumed. Gandanta really means knot. It's just a knot, right? And that knot is karma that's tied up, bound, right? Where we feel, stuck, or we feel like we can't get out of our kind of behavioral patterns or our ways of being. We get stuck in our ways, in other words. And the fire signs break, right? Or segue or cut, right? These kind of limitations of behavior.
Quick question. Do you know if there's I haven't seen it, a Western equivalent to this transition between water and
I
fire that
haven't.
way?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. No. Gundanta is just a name, like I said, that means knot or something that's tied or bound.
Right.
And it's a name that comes right out of India, you know. So in Western astrology, I've never heard of it. They might have some type of, Western astrology's got so many like little small techniques. This is not a small technique. This is actually pretty substantial.
Right.
And when we have planets placed there, or even planets transiting there, right,
Mm-hmm.
we'll notice some major change, some kind of thing that is an ending and a new beginning, right? That's what the Gundanta zones do with regards to fire or water and fire. There's always between water and fire. So your late degrees water, early degrees fire, right?
Right.
And, you know, interestingly enough, not only that, if you really understand how this works, every single what we call pada, right, which is between 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20 minutes of every fire sign is Aries, right? So 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20 minutes of Aries is an Aries pada, right? When you look at 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20 minutes of Leo, it's an Aries pada. 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20 minutes of Sagittarius is a Aries pada, meaning the footing, right? The undergirding kind of piece of it is Aries. So it almost repeats again in a certain way to keep you where that energy is all about fire. So these Gandanta zones, right, are just that. They always keep you in this kind of, I want to say agitated. It could be agitated depending on how it's placed in your chart. If the Gandanta zones are between the say sixth and seventh house, right, seventh and eighth house, right, 11th and 12th, 12th and first, right. It depends on how it's placed in your chart. But if it is placed in a very precarious positioning, it can mean that you're constantly beginning, right? You're constantly starting over. And there's an old adage, right, that says only fools continue to re-begin, right? So, it's where you get stuck. It's where you can't come out of this kind of agitated existence or state of mind or state of being. If it's Venus there, right, that means that your relationships have a very staunch, fiery, and adamant disposition, and you can hit your head over and over again in regards to these areas of life, right? Of course, depends on what Venus rules in your chart and all those kind of nuances, but just
Right.
generally speaking, right? It can mean that. I don't recall as to whether or not Kevin Samuels has it in his chart. I don't know while we're talking if you can pull it up. I think he might have it at 0 degrees, between 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20 minutes in Aries. He might have that. It just means that you have
Venus.
yeah,
All right, hold on. Pull it up.
either Venus or Saturn, one of the two. I know it's one of the two. Right. You're always looking to make headway, but almost hard to truly achieve the goal in mind, because Aries is a goal oriented sign, and in that particular portion of fire signs, it means that you're always having a goal. You always start things, but never what
Finish 'em.
complete them, right? So this is the kind of energy that Gandanta zone has, where you feel like you're starting, but you just can't get a foothold. You can't make headway. You try something new, and then you try something else new, and you try something else new, and you're always trying something, but you never master anything. So interestingly enough, right, this is just the first portion of the fire signs. Right? Going a little further into detail, that particular portion of fire signs is also connected to a planet that is called K2, right? The southern node. And the southern node, right, happens to be a very interesting way to tell what the fire signs are all about.
Saturn is in Gundanta, not Venus. Or Venus,
Okay,
I mean,
Saturn.
depending on
I
how
knew it
you
was
do,
one of the
yeah,
two, right?
yeah. Depending on how you calculate. I mean,
Right.
Venus is 2 degrees 49 minutes. I mean, but it's, well, you know, our time is, we don't have a good time on him anyway. You know what I mean? But we have to date.
Well, the time wouldn't matter as far as the planet's
For
placement.
Venus, it might, but Saturn, not, you know. Saturn is
Definitely
what it
not,
is.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean, it even with Venus moves 1 degree per day, so it'd have to be towards the end of that day, right? That would really make the impact. So I'm pretty sure it's probably in that Gundanta zone. But interestingly enough, Saturn is there, right?
Right.
And Saturn means, right, that ability to have patience. If you notice, he's not a very patient man, is he? Right?
No.
Right? The ability to have endurance, right? The ability to kind of die to your lower nature, right? This is what Saturn can produce, and it's considered debilitated in the sign of Aries. So, in every other area of life, when it comes to his relationships, his spiritual development, those areas are very much handicapped, right? Because Saturn is in that zone, right? So, Saturn being in that zone really talks about how well he can handle pressure, right? Saturn is the planet that squeezes and capitulates and puts pressure on us. So he can't handle, someone brings the pressure, he responds in a very, agitated or angry or right downright forceful way. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think he'd be putting on a lot sometimes though too.
Well,
Like he
that's what
might
it will
do it on
do.
purpose. Yeah, he might do it on purpose.
That's it, it
just-
will do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll put on a lot because it doesn't want to go through that process of being dragged through. Right? It doesn't want to go through the completion of a thought or an idea of someone else that's in opposition to you. Right.
Right.
So it's a short-circuited warrior, right? Warrior that's ready to cut your head off before you even make a statement. Right? And he does it more with, I've seen him do it with men too, right? Just get to the point. Well, what are you gonna ask, right? What are you talking about, right?
Yeah, I think he's short. I think he's he's shorter with dudes. Yeah, like they don't. They,
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was going to say that he might be shorter with men, right? Which is, the masculine energy, which it can't. That's that heat coming back to you.
Right.
So interestingly enough, Saturn is there, right?
Yeah.
So this shows kind of one of those behavior patterns, right? But nonetheless, right, K2, back to what we were kind of talking about, is the kind of planet that it's the planet that cuts or severs completely, right? Mars does a little cutting, right? But K2 is headless, right? So it's a new beginning altogether. When you enter into this plane, consider Aries as the first sign, right? So the Aries energy cuts you off from your past life existence, right? That K2 piece of the puzzle segregates or severs, right, you from knowing, right, or remembering the past.
Right.
And so K2 being that constituent planet that does that, right, it very well is good. It's placed very well in in a fire sign. That's what fire is all about: is burning things up, right? Burning up the seeds of ignorance, burning up the seeds of complacency, right? It makes you get up and go, right? One of the things that Aries does, it's very much on the go, right? It wants to get out and make things happen. It can be impatient. It can be, head overly headstrong to the point where it has to make mistakes because remember, it doesn't remember. Right? We're talking about the nakshatra called Ashwini, by the way. This is what K2 rules. And so it rules also Magha, right? Which is in Leo between 0 degrees to 13 degrees 20 minutes. And it also rules Mula, which is 0 degrees 13, which is from 0 degrees to 13 degrees 20 minutes. All three of these have something to do with severing something from the past. Have you noticed that, Atel?
Right. Yeah.
Right. All of them have something to do with severing something from the past. Right? Air Ashwini has something to do with severing from your previous overall overarching existence, right? From your previous life or lives, right? Pisces is the sign before it. So Pisces is the kind of culmination or the accumulation of all of your life or lifetimes or your karmic dues. Whereas now Aries is saying you're a baby, you're new, you're fresh, right? You're starting over, you have a new lot, you've been giving another opportunity. This is what Ashwini is all about, right? When we talk about Magha, Magha is considered to be connected to what is called the Pitris or the ancestors, right? And the ancestors is also some of those things that you're connected to in your what? Your past, right? Yeah. See, K2 has the ability to stop and sever and continue something that you need to finish, right? So it's interesting that this particular nakshatra also talks about being able to detach from the body. One of the powers, each one of these nakshatras has a power or an ability, right? And that power and ability allows you to snap or sever yourself from your body. Literally, that's the power of Magha, right? So this consideration shows that the consistency and the kind of continuation of each one of these rulers in each nakshatra has a very specific message about what the fire signs contain and why they contain these specific nakshatras. The next one is Mula, and the name for Mul literally means root, right? It literally means the word Mula, like when we talk about planets that are in their own signs, their signs that represent themselves the best as a Mula Trikona. So it's the root trine or the base trine. So Mula means roots, and literally the symbol for Mula is a bunch of roots. Right? And it is ruled by the goddess Niriti, or the goddess of destruction, to destroy that which is previous, right, in the scorpionic kind of valence. When that we talk about that Gundanta Zone, right, is to destroy all of the ignorance that comes from the previous process.
Right.
So this is just K2 in regards to these particular nakshatras. It is considered a downward looking nakshatra. Right? And downward means when you have an energy that, even planets have a way of that they look, like Mars and Venus, Mercury and Venus look sideways, right? Saturn looks down, right? Jupiter looks up, right? They all have their way of looking. Well, the nakshatras have something very similar, right? And every K2 nakshatra looks down, right? You won't find a K2 nakshatra in any other sign but what? Fire signs.
Right.
So they're exclusive to that. You'll find some other nakshatras that overlap in other particular signs, right, or in other zodiac signs, but K2 being it alone,
only in sun signs, yeah.
Only in fire signs. It cuts.
Not sun signs, fire signs,
right?
Yeah.
It cuts. It severs. It's a segue. It's a Gundanta zone, right? For course, between 0 degrees to 3 degrees, 20 minutes. So, this is when you begin to understand why they would place these things in that particular positioning. Now, the next planet that we're going to look at is Venus, right? And Venus happens to connect all three fire signs as well via the nakshatras, right? Now, Venus is, you would think, why Venus? It's kind of almost like saying, Venus is an enemy to most of the fire sign rulers. right? Venus is enemy to Mars to some degree. It's antithesis of Mars. It's the antithesis of Leo. Sun and Venus are definitely not going to see eye to eye, and Jupiter and Venus are known mortal enemies, right? So it's strange that Venus would be. You would think that Mars would be in the nakshatra, right? Or be ruling the nakshatra in fire signs, but not necessarily so when you understand the nature of fire, right? The nature of fire is to fight, isn't it?
Right.
The nature of fire is to overcome, right? To face things that you don't necessarily want to face. And this is one of the major things that a Venus ruled nakshatra can produce. Interestingly enough, every Venus ruled nakshatra talks about just that. For example, when we talk about Baharani in Aries, which is between 13 degrees 20 minutes to 16 degrees, 13 degrees 20 minutes to 26 degrees 40 minutes, right? It's ruled by Yama, the god of death, right? You get my theme here, right? It's talking about facing some adverse circumstances. You know, the pleasure principle can be a very major distraction to facing things that are adverse or hard to deal with. So it becomes almost a catalyst or a push or a prod to make sure that you overcome these particular aspects of your nature. Right. It's also a downward looking nakshatra. When we talk about Venus in regards to Leo, we're talking about Purva Falguni. Right. Purva Falguni, interestingly enough, is ruled by the god of pleasure called Bagha. The symbol of Purva Falguni is a hammock. Right?
Yeah. It's almost like, you know how, like, especially in like a lot of cartoons and stuff like that, you'll see like the king sitting back getting grapes, or the queen getting grapes fed to him, and
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's
Man, look. No, and go. Let me backtrack just a second, because I didn't give Baharani her its just due. Right, Baharani is one of the things it's known for is its sexual appetites.
Mm-hmm.
And it only makes sense because Aries is ruled by Mars and Venus, right? And the combination of the two produces a high level of libido, a high level of sexual energy. So one of the things that you will find with
it's like a uterus.
In fact, that's the symbol of it is a uterus. You're right, brother.
Right.
Right. It's also called Baharani means to bear, right? To bear things, to be able to endure, right? So in order to endure, you have to have a lot of libido, don't you?
Right.
Right. To be able to push through, which Aries likes to do, right? Excuse me. You have to have that sexual appetite, that general fire that is in the lower nature that pushes up and comes all the way out. So this is what Baharani, the ability to bear, produces. And again, it means to give birth, right? But death and birth are two sides of the same coin.
Same coin,
right? So Baharani has this type of energy where it can go deep and it can be very intense. It's a very intense nakshatra, right? And so that intensity comes from the combination of these particular forces that are literally linked together and are strongly, right, adamant. Yama, think about Yama, the god of death, and then birth, right, or bearing, like childbearing, right? Giving birth to something is like, having a very harsh process to go through. And guess what? In birth, and me and Ms. Brother can both attest to that, death is present, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've ever had a child or see the child being born, there's a lot of intensity. Death is at the precipice. That's why a lot of women can die in childbirth.
Right. It's yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So Yama, this is the crossroads. Yama, the god of death, right, is there, present. Now, of course, with modernization of hospitals and medicine, right, a quote unquote modernization, um, you know, it's probably less apropos because we have, life sustaining capabilities, right? But in ancient times, think about the feeling of birth. Think about that. I know, brother, you know what I'm talking about. It could be almost frightening, right?
Right, because it's like it can go either way, you know.
It can go either way. The child can die just right along with her.
Right. I mean, think the baby comes out with umbilical cord wrapped around their neck or something like that. I mean, the complications there's still complications today, but there's tools and systemized protocols to be able to deal with them today. But imagine in ancient times where you have these certain complications that come about. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like, what is it when the woman's blood pressure drops? Like, what is that called? I forgot. But I mean, it's a lot of things that can go right. There's a lot of things that can go tremendously wrong.
Absolutely. So this is Baharani.
Right.
And Venus is the right part of us that produces or gives access to that portion through pleasure to create life. Well, if we pan over to Magha, I'm not saying to Leo, the sign, the nakshatra after Magha, 13 degrees 20 minutes to 26 degrees 40 minutes of Leo. Guess what? One of the things that is attached to Purva Falguni, right? And Purva means prior or post or first. Falguni, fall means fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the first fruit or the fruit that falls off of the tree first, right? Or the fruit that you ripe before you get to the other fruits, right? Well, it's also a tenet or has a connection to procreation,
Right.
right? Literally, Purva Falguni is directly tied to being a it has a fecundity to it. It has um, a um, a fertility that's off of the charts because it's there to produce. When we talk about the king, Leo, one of the things my good brother made very good point of is that it's, all about relaxation and enjoyment and, being fed and being catered to and being worshipped, right? This is one of the things that Purva Falguni enjoys. Remember, Venus is the planet that likes to be adorned,
Right.
right? And the sun is no less, right, in the sense of self-importance, that energy as well. So when they're combined, right, this creates the energy that literally can be the part where you are very adept at love making, tantra in the sense of sexual aspects of tantra, not in the other aspects. um Marriage, right, being connected to the larger sense of community, right, in the sense of family, right? This is what Purva Falguni is all about, and it's very uncomfortable if it doesn't have that connection to family, children, having abundance of things of surplus, wealth, that type of thing. So Purva Falguni, right, is that continuation or the higher octave of Baharani.
I mean, we was just talking about this with. I mean, this is some of what we see in Jada Pinkett, right? Because her moon's in
Her
Purva
moon,
Falguni.
her moon is
So this,
absolutely in Purva Falguni.
so that's some of what you're seeing is that in Purva. I mean, so yeah, that's kind of a rationale for why she kind of positions herself that way
Right.
in relation to Will Smith.
They can make very good homemakers, though,
Mm-hmm.
right? The doting wife. I don't know about doting for her, but definitely one that you can consider that as a kind of sub theme of the nakshatra. Um, you know, the ability to procreate and the ability to experience pleasure, right, is also a part of fire. You know, the
Right.
warmth of fire, right, the reassurance of light, right. When darkness is set in, when light comes about, it gives you a sense of relief. You know, so these Venus aspects of fire signs is just that higher octave or higher plateau of, feeling good, feeling better, feeling reassured, feeling confident, right? Think about the king, like you said, when he's getting the grapes, he doesn't have a care in the world, right?
Kicking it.
Right. But they can also become debaucherous, right? If you ever get a good movie to really see what Purva Falguni looks like in real time is a movie called Kama Sutra. In Kama Sutra, the king was a nothing to be. Everything about the king was let's get it on, having orgies and hitting his opium. Right, he had the opium. He was hitting the opium. Right, he's an opium head. Right, um, just it's a good way to kind of see what, in the negative sense, Purva Falguni can produce in regards to rulership. It can be very, lazy, and overly confident, right?
It's where the I mean, this is gout, right? King's disease.
Hmm. Right, right,
Paul
right,
Falguni. Probably somebody from Paul Falguni is probably why they got the name for gout, King's disease.
right,
Just all the
right.
enormous,
Because
all the best food, all the best.
it's the best, the richest of richest, whatever, right? Richest cakes and if they eat meat and all that kind of, the best of the best, right? And
Right.
think about it, the best of the best goes along with fire signs, doesn't it? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I mean,
All that glitters isn't what though?
and gold, right?
And gold, right?
Man, that gout is heavy through the men in my dad's line. All of them, everybody, grandfather, everybody, gout.
Really? Yeah. I'm thankful I don't have any lineage that has gout a whole lot of, but I'm
Man,
definitely, I got my fair share of fire in my chart, right? So
yeah.
definitely understand that. Um, and then the last one, and of course it is also a downward looking nakshatra, right? Um, we'll talk about the last one. It's Purva Ashata. Now, Purva, you'll notice that Purva is a consistent kind of title that you'll see in the nakshatras, right? Purva
Mm-hmm.
Falguni, Purva Ashata, Purva Bhadrapada, right? The Purvas, right, are the kind of first aspects of the energy, right? Where Uttara is the latter, right, or the completion thereof.
Mm-hmm.
But Purva Ashata, right, is from 13 degrees, right, 20 minutes to 26 degrees, 40 minutes of, right,
Sag.
Sagittarius. And one other thing I want to make mention of with the fire and Venus connection is creativity, right? Fire signs are very creative. They come up with new ideas and inspirations in the blink of an eye, right? So this is something to consider why Venus would be connected to fire. Creativity. Remember, Baharani is to create and bear what? Life,
Life.
right? Purva Falguni is to create and bear generations, right? Think about generations as a sense of the previous nakshatra, which is the Pitris, right? The generations before, and Purva Falguni creates the what? Generations to
Generations
come,
after. Yeah.
right? Now, when we get to Purva Ashada, you would think, why would Venus be in a Jupiter ruled sign? Well, it makes perfect sense when you understand what Purva Ashada is. Purva Ashada, if you really want to know how it works, because fire signs are inspirational. They give us the kind of get up and go, the energy to move and make things happen. Well, Purva Ashata is called the invincible one, right? It's invincible. It can't be what? Defeated.
See it.
Remember, if you've kind of studied these particular planets from a Jyotish point of view, Venus is the one that can bring the what? Dead back to life, right? You go back to Baharani, when you were reborn, you were previously dead, weren't you?
Right.
Right? Into Purva Falguni, right? Those ancestors, the Petries, have a new body in the sense of generations, right? So this also in the sense of regenerating or reinstituting life. Well, Purva Ashata is the one that considers itself undefeatable. It has a you can't get them down. And Sagittarius has a buoyancy that is unprecedented. It can literally bounce back. It's a 4-footed animal and also it's 2-footed at the same time. So it has a ability to literally bounce back.
Right.
Right? Purva Ashata literally means, right? You can't break it. It can't shatter its confidence. Now this can be good or bad, of course, right? Because sometimes you should be a little bit more humble, right, to be able to learn from others. And this is when we talk about like the preacher energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pastor, the preacher that is, giving down its right, its mandates of the Lord, right? It puts on a show, right? And all
Yeah.
fire signs naturally put on a what? Like
Sure.
show, don't they? Right. Right. It's the deity it's connected to is Apis, water. Water is that's what Apis is, right? And you would think, why would water be connected to? Well, Venus is actually a naturally a watery planet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. But water in the sense of right being where you can't exhaust it, right? It's has fuel for days, right? You know,
Water always finds a way.
water always finds a way. It can maneuver through the cracks and crevices underneath, around, and
It'll
get to
beat
the end
against a
goal.
rock until it gets through it. It might be 1,000
It
years
could
from
be
now, but
gentle, right? It could be gentle, and it can also be what? Very harsh, can't it?
right.
Right. See, ancestors had a way of looking at things from a very, you know, analogous mindset. You
Right.
know, and the analogy of water, right? If you've ever dove off of a high diving board and hit belly first, right?
Don't ever do that, folks.
You know, right?
Don't do it.
Water, right, can be definitely right.
Take
It
his
can
word for it.
take your wind. Yeah.
Take your
Right.
belly too, man.
Take all kind of stuff, right? You wake up with a
Take-
headache, everything. You come out with a headache and everything, right?
Wake
So,
up out of surgery, man, hitting that water belly.
you might,
Hit it
yeah.
too far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, water has a dual kind of aspect to it, but in a sense of Purva Ashata, right? It's that sense of being able to make the best of whatever circumstance comes your way and overcome it.
Right.
Right? And Venus, again, is the power to bring the dead back to existence. It cannot be stopped. See, in the story of, right, we talk about the Devas and the Asuras, right? See, the Devas were given the nectar of immortality, right? But the Asuras got Venus as their teacher, as their guide. So when they die, Venus just snaps them back to life. So they still have what? Immortality. They just have to go through death and be reborn, right? Where the Devas never face death, so they never taste, right, of the negative sides of life. So they both have their positive and negatives. Both Devas have the negative side, and so do Asuras. They're not bad or good. They're just two sides of our existence,
Right.
right? So when you understand how these things work, when you kind of look at a story or a movie, I always refer movies to kind of give you an idea or a picture. The Dark Crystal is a really good one, right? Because it talks about these two beings that were separated, and you have these negatives and positives. Well, the
They just brought that back
I heard, yeah,
like a year or so ago.
yeah, yeah. It's a good movie. It's a kids movie. It's been created by Jim Henson, but it's still an
Like
excellent movie to kind of understand.
it's like an expounding on I don't know if you remember this, but Eureka's Castle.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, you're right. It
Yeah.
is exactly that. Right.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a good way to visualize, right?
Mhm.
When you have these two, same thing with Star Wars, right?
Right.
You have the Jedi and you have the Sith, right?
Hmm.
The Jedi fell because of their hubris, their kind of, lofty ideas and not seeing reality. And the
Hmm.
Sith concentrated themselves down into two and overtook the whole thing. But you still need both sides, the light and the dark, to be a whole being, right? Because they're both part of us. They just have to be reconciled. So
Right.
in Purva Ashata, right, which is the highest octave of Venus as far as the nakshatras are concerned, it is the sign that literally allows us to teach very well, to instruct, to guide, to present multiple options, multiple paths, multiple means, right? It literally can sit down and come up with all kind of strategic. It's a nakshatra of strategy, of war, right? It's a warrior's nakshatra. It is not complacent. Just because Venus is there, no complaint. Not like Purva Falguni, not at all, right? It is literally the higher octave of it because it takes things to war. It will go the length. It is literally enthusiasm encapsulated, right? But enthusiasm can burn out, right? You have to have something else there to be able to win the race. That's why the next nakshatra we're going to talk about is that winning the race, right? So the last portion of the fire signs is ruled by, and it makes very perfect sense. It's ruled by the sun, right? The sun, right, is that part of us that is connected to the soul, connected to the causal body, that which comes back over and over and over again to relearn lessons. Fire, again, remember, if we go back to the first portion of what we talked about it continuing from the previous existence with a new lot. Well, now in this later half of fire signs from 26 degrees 40 minutes to 30 degrees of every single fire sign, you'll see that they're ruled by the sun.
Right.
Right now, again, this to continue this, the sun rule nakshatras also co-rule earth signs, and we're going to get to that at some point. We're going to do a whole series. This is just the first one of which we'll go through each one of the nakshatras, right, in regards to the relationship to the elements or to the other three, right, earth, water, and fire. I mean, earth, air, and water.
Right.
But nonetheless, right, sun in regards to the fire signs makes perfect sense because it's the last end of the phase of that particular energy, and it literally produces the ability to connect with the inner being, the inner core of who you are. And the first one is called Cryptica, right? From 26 degrees 40 minutes to 30 degrees, and it's only one pada that exist in the fire signs. The other three exist in earth.
I think we was talking once a little while ago. Is that I mean I'm sure there's a lot of people that have it, but like just from the charts I got, I don't know how many charts I have in my software, but it's hard to find a lot of people with their
With that particular
moons on the fire side of
on the airy side
these
of Cryptica. You're
these
right.
Cryptica,
Mm-hmm.
or even I think Sagittarius Uttarashada is real
Uttara
common. I
Ashata.
see more of them, but
It's
Uttara
very rare.
Falguni
It
and
is. It's more
Cryptica,
rare.
it's not as common.
Even in Leo, right? You won't
Yeah.
find too many with sun. You see what I'm saying? And think about it. It makes sense, right? Because we're gonna talk about that in just a minute when we get to Leo, right? When we get to
Right.
Utara Falguni. But in talking about Cryptica, right? Cryptica is literally tied to the word critical.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about earlier this particular Rahu in Aries, right? Well, guess what nakshatra is in? It's in Cryptica right now,
Critica. Yeah.
right? And Cryptica has to do with purification. The god that is tied in with Cryptica is Agni. Agni, which is fire, right? So not only do you have a fire sign, you have a planet that indicates fire, but you have a particular deva or deity that is also what? Fire.
Fire.
So fire upon fire upon fire processes into purification to burn away those things that are considered useless, purposeless. And think about it. Anybody with planets in this particular portion of Aries, they are intense to the max. They don't take any time getting rid of things in their life. They have a very strong, adamant, overly adamant way of being. They don't play, right? Aries, of course, is a warrior in all aspects, but in the sense of Kritika, it is leadership qualities. Right? It's tied to the Pleiades. Remember, we talked about the stars. I didn't get into much into the stars and the other ones, but this one is very interesting because it's tied into the Pleiades, the seven sisters. And the other deity that is tied to is also Kartikeya, which is Mars, right? Another way of saying Mars. So Agni, Kartikeya, all these things are have the ability to sever or to intensify, literally diversifying or separating yourself from another thing.
You know, out of all the charts that I have, the most notable name that I have with Moon in the Aries side of Critica is Bill Clinton.
Interesting.
It's the only one. I mean, I have other people. It's not many.
What
but
is
the
his
only one-
ascendant though?
His ascendant is Virgo.
So it'd be at the end of the eighth house,
Mm-hmm.
right? What makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense, right? Getting the scandal that he was, right, a part of.
Right.
Eighth house deals
Right.
with scandals, especially in the sense of being a ruler or a president. That's where that moon comes right on in. Right? Makes perfect sense, right? Considering also, right, that the constituent that he dealt with was kind of like an 11th house thing, right?
Yeah.
So, the intensity, right? Bill,
That's where his first house. I mean, that's where his first lord is at. That's where Mercury is at.
right? Right? In Cancer, right?
Right.
So it makes perfect sense when you look at the destiny and how it unfolds for the female, right, to be in the sign that gives him this kind of scandalous kind of process, but also it's in the sign that is the head, right? That's what he got caught up for, right? No pun intended, right? Sexual acts, right, through Aries, right? So,
Right.
right, considering, right, it's also a leadership nakshatra, though, right? Most people that I know with Kritika in there, even in the Earth rule side, is still they're leaders of some kind, and you must understand that Kritika was considered the first nakshatra before. Most people don't know that, right? Kritika was considered the first nakshatra. Of course, this is when the age of Taurus was in play, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the first nakshatra. So being number one, the sun, right, goes perfectly with Kritika. Right? It can deal in intense burning, intense um, control, right, over things. Now the Taurus side makes excellent cooks, right? You and I both know, brother, with that. But remember, we talked about him and his kind of, linear thinness, right? But
Yeah.
he's still Kritika, and that Kritika will burn, right? It will produce a leanness to some degree.
Shout out to Ra Yosef.
Right. What's up, Ra Yosef?
Yeah,
Right.
shout out,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah. Brother actually came into town. I didn't have a chance to meet him. I was really trying to. I was trying to meet him, right?
Mhm.
We just kind of missed paths, but he'll be back, I'm sure, when he comes into town. We're definitely gonna connect. But definitely a multi-talented brother. But as a leadership, nonetheless, and Kritika just produces those people that stand out, that kind of take charge, that move ahead. Right? It's the part of the Aries that, like, literally, it's the it's the part that is headstrong. Right?
Right.
You can't change their mind. Once they make their mind up, it's a wrap. Right? So we covered, and it's only one pot. It's only a very small portion of Aries. When we get into the next nakshatra, and it actually looks upwards, it doesn't look down, it looks up. And looking up is to have that optimism, right? To have that a part of us that literally is unconquerable.
Yeah, Wani, me too. I got Moon and Uttara Falguni as well, and Leo. So we got some comments. So shout out to you.
We got one brother here, right, with the rarity of having that particular placement, right? Right. And brother's definitely a leader as well. So, when we get over into, the next nakshatra, which is only 3 degrees, it's only 26 degrees, 40 minutes to 30 degrees Leo, right? This is ruled by the sun. And this one really talks about literally being a what they call a good sport, right? Um, it's very rare that you get the moon placed or any planets placed in these small portions of the nakshatras or of the signs rather. But it really talks about, being a friend, being reliable, having a sense of public responsibility, right? It's also oriented around leadership, but not like Kritika, because Kritika is a leadership that can literally become despotic, right? It can become overbearing or become a dictator, right?
It's what I think. It's like what we think of, especially in the Western world. You know what I mean? Like the Western form of what they like. If someone was to write down what are some qualities of leadership, it might spit out some of those qualities that you might find in Cryptica or whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
It
The
would.
things that it takes to,
The things that it takes to be in a position of authority.
Right.
Of course, Magha does without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
But Kritika is more of the side that deals with being the fight for leadership. Whereas, the difference between that and Magha is born a leader, right?
Right.
Kritika is one that will climb to the top in the sense of proving oneself, because Aries likes to do that. It likes to be able to show and prove, right?
Right.
So it's kind of Magha does have those, but Kritika does as well. And Kritika, in the sense of Aries side, is really harsh. It can be very I don't want to say mean, but no nonsense.
Yeah.
Doesn't take much to bring that fire to the surface. Magha is a little different, right? Magha is more the king that is, I give you a couple chances, right? Once that's done, then you're gonna get cut. right? But Magha doesn't give any chances. It's directly to the point. It's also kind of like scissors in a way when we talk about Cryptica, to cut.
Yeah, cut. Yep.
Right? Magha is not as cutting, right? But the next nakshatra we're talking about, Uttara Falguni, right, is really it's the politician,
Right.
right? It can smooth its way into the best of things, right? The gift of gab, right? The ability to shine through its actions and works, not because it has this kind of arrogance, but because it just does what it does and reaps the rewards from its actions. That's what Uttara Falguni. It's the later fruit. Remember, Purva Falguni is the first fruit, right? The later fruit is really where the work comes in. The later fruit is saying, I'm going to get the grassroots. I'm going to get the people what they need. I'm going to make sure that everybody's taken care of. The deity that rules by it is literally
Aryamana.
translates into a friend,
Yeah.
Aryamana. Right? They can be very loyal to a fault. Right? Leo is loyal just in general, but Uttara Falguni is loyal to a fault. Right? They're loyal no matter what. You can burn them, and they say, well, that's just who he is or who she is, and they're they're considerate of the weaknesses that come inherent in people, so they can look beyond them, and again, that loyalty can get them caught up. Right? That loyalty is one that is shines, and they're literally noble by character, more noble than Magha. Of course, Purva Falguni has some situational ethics sometimes, but Uttara Falguni will not, it does not want to be perceived as underhanded or shady. Right? It has a quality. Think about it. It's the sun's sign with the sun's ruler in the nakshatra, double sun. So that nobility, right? Also, Uttara Falguni make great husbands or wives, right? Because they'll stick through. They'll hold down the fort. They'll let you have your day because they shine naturally. So there's nothing much they have to do because they're very effective in getting things done. It's the last portion of Leo that really says, you know what? I am who I am. Take it or leave it. And most people take it because they do very well in what they put their minds to. Very good in the sense of public relations, right? PR firm, PR firms make a great addition with a planet, especially if the sun is there. That's a triple whammy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this particular pada is Sagittarius, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
Right. So it even has a deeper meaning in the sense of, and all particular sun padas in fire signs are all Sagittarius. Remember we talked about earlier those patterns? Well,
Mm-hmm.
now we're seeing them repeat themselves. Just like the beginning of every fire sign is Aries, the last pada is always Sagittarius. Right? So when it comes to Purva Uttara Falguni, it is by far right the king that has connected with his people, that is on the ground taking and considering what the people need, a friend to the people, a servant what to the people. Now Magha is also a servant because one of the classifications of Magha, interestingly enough, is a Shudra, which is a servant. And there's an old adage that a king is what?
A servant.
Nothing but a servant to the people, right?
Right.
But Uttara Falguni is the preeminence of that. It will take that servitude and make sure that everybody is fed. Magha will make sure it's fed first and then everybody else. Uttara Falguni will make sure everyone's fed just like he is or she is. So it's a nobility. It produces a high quality of character. right? But again, their Achilles heel is to not see the negative in man, to not see the lower nature, and not to be considerate of taking people that will stab you in the back and turn the knife.
I think it's like, I speak from personal experience. It's not that you don't see it; it's that you're willing to look beyond it.
And that's
You might know,
but you might
that you're willing to look beyond it. You see it, but you don't define that person by it.
no, you don't
want
define
them,
them. But the thing is,
yeah,
the loyalty factor, right,
right,
can get, because remember, everybody comes to play. You know, when we talk about quote unquote, you know, the Bible, you know, Judas, that's his role, right?
right,
And you got to
right.
take that into factor. Even though, yes, we have those Judases amongst us, right? Those Judases amongst you are there to teach you to keep that there are two truths.
Right.
Yes, Ma'at is truth, but you have the hall of double judgment, don't you? Right?
Yeah.
And they said that you take in the physical as well as the spiritual. Utara Falguni can take in the spiritual and ignore or put to the side the material and get caught that way. Right? You got to look at every placement too, right?
Right.
But for the most part, this is the Achilles heel because it's a friend to everyone, enemy to no one, right? So moving on, right? And it looks up, of course, right? Moving into the last of the Mohicans, right? Uttara Ashata, right? Uttara Ashata is a very, in fact, is also called Abhijit. It's considered the 28th nakshatra, right? It has a classification of its own. It's part of the Sagittarius that is very patient. You don't consider I don't consider, most people don't consider Sag the energy of literally, you know, patience, right? Allowing things to come to a fruition. And Uttara Ashata is one that will, right? This, and each one of these has a symbol. My good brother pointed out earlier that Baharani symbol is a uterus or a womb, right? The symbol for Magha is a tail, lion's tail, right? And also a throne, right? A palanquin, right? Not the throne as in, well, it's a throne that you sit on, right? But it also is one that you could carry, where the kings will be or queens will be carried, right? Or a throne room, right? Um, you know, Cryptica is a blade, right? Um, Ashwini is a horse's head, right? They all have their symbols. When we get to, you know, Mula is a root, right? Uttara Shada is a fan, right? The fan that can flame the flames high or what? Cool things down.
Cool down,
And that's
yeah.
why it's also considered, we talked about with water with opposite, it can cool you down. It can relax you, it can counsel you, it can assuage you. So it has both, it has two sides to it. But when we get to Uttara Ashata, excuse me, one of the things that is connected to is a goad or an elephant's tusk. Right? And
Yeah, you meant Purva Shada before with the fan.
Purva shot is with the fan. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I said it.
yeah.
Purva shot is with the fan. It can flame you up or cool you down, right? But when we get to Uttara shot, it's a gold. It's an elephant's tusk, right? It has the power to push through, right? Uttara Ashata means, Purva Ashata means early victory, right? Uttara Ashata means what? Later victory.
Later victory, yeah.
It has the ability to, one of the things about Uttara Ashata, interestingly enough, it really, it has to get to a certain level of age to get to the best qualities of itself. Usually 20s, late 20s, early 30s is when they kind of hit the ground running. Right. Whereas Purva Ashata does it very on the early on, right? Uttara Ashata does it a little later, but they have the final say, right? They're the type of energy, it produces the type of energy that will literally be very, very intricately calculating, because the other side of Uttara Ashata is tied to Capricorn, right? Which is, of course, a very planning, well drawn out, patient, enduring energy. But the side of Sagittarius, that hot energy, literally gives it the fire and the force to make things happen on a grand scale. They do things in a big way, Uttara
Right.
Ashata. They don't like doing things that are small or seemingly insignificant. And it takes time to make big things happen usually. So these people are grand planners. They literally have knowledge of many areas of life. They don't just focus in on one. They're masters of many trades, not just one. Right? If you looked at a preacher, right, or a teacher, it will be considered the ultimate guru or the sage, because he can wait and understand that, hey, maybe this isn't my time to say something. You know, Purva Ashata will say it right off. They can be very judgmental. But I can say things and really like get right to the point, right? Because it's a part of being invincible. But Uttara Ashata will wait to the exact right moment, and they're not very wordy. It's not a wordy energy, it's an action energy. But they will get to the last moment and say maybe 2 or 3 words, and it becomes profound. Right? It's and a lot of times they associate it with Ganesha. Unfortunately, one of the things that kind of comes with Uttara Ashata is that when it comes to marriage, they kind of fall asunder to some degree, right? It's not a marriage. In fact, the totem, each one of these also has an animal that is associated. We won't get into that too much, but just talking about Uttara Ashata, it's a mongoose. Now, a mongoose also can control serpentine energies, can it?
Mm-hmm.
It can fight off cobras, right?
Right.
Right? But it doesn't have it doesn't have a mate or a bonding pair, because every other nakshatra, all the other 26, think about it, 26 is divisible with 2, isn't it?
Right.
Well, the 27th doesn't have a pair. It's alone. It stands alone. In relationships, they can kind of go the lone route, or, you know, have a relationship but not be so invested in it, or, you know, kind of have a, what do you call, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a type of relationship that is, you know, the back end of things. It doesn't have a full. It doesn't. Relationships don't come to the forefront of their life. The forefront of their life is to make something happen that's magnanimous, or to bring something out of the inner world to the outer that everyone can benefit from, including themselves. Right. It's an upward-looking nakshatra as well. So, right, talking about these particular different nakshatras as far as fire signs, and it's from 26 degrees, 40 minutes to 30 degrees, uh, 0 minutes of Sag, right? All of these, right? And again, and here's the beautiful part about it. Its last particular portion is where we consider it what's called Vargadama, right? Because it's a Sag sign, and guess what? The
Goes in
Pada
Sag.
is also Sag, right?
Right.
So any planet placed here can do very well because it has a kind of backup that is similar to itself. And of course, we look at the Navamsha to see where these placements are, but this is one of the benefits of having planets placed there. It literally has the ability to kind of endure, right, and go them out, and you know doesn't need necessarily much else that's external from itself, right? So, you know, this is how we begin to unravel the patterns, right, that are inside of these particular what we call zodiac signs. The nakshatras are keys to unraveling or unpacking the inner meanings of these particular energies. And so it's a beautiful system. We could go deeper. I could be here for a whole nother probably hour talking
Oh
about the
yeah.
subtleties of each pada and so forth, right? But again, this is when you begin to study deeper into the kind of benefits and the jewels and gems that Jyotish produces. And with that being said, right, we're going to definitely do this again. We're going to probably continue with earth signs and get into those particular nakshatras as well.
Indeed, 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 indeed. So big up to that. It's definitely been a great show or whatnot. But as usual, I want to remind you all, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share this with everybody. You know, like this video. If you're in here watching it, make sure you give it a like. It helps push this video to other people who might be, you know, interested into similar topics and different things like that or whatnot. Helps, you know, overall grow the channel and everything like that. All right. You know, this has been episode 114 or whatnot. We're trucking along this this season or whatnot, you know. So definitely, you know, hit this on a replay. Check out some of the other episodes we have or whatnot. Go subscribe to us on the audio platforms, right? If you got Spotify, if you got Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all of these different platforms, just subscribe, even if you're not even listening to it. Make sure you subscribe and whatnot, because it helps and whatnot, so we can keep delivering great content to you or whatnot. But you know, again, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back with another great episode next week, and we'll see you then. All right, be safe out there, and we're out. Peace.